I just want to say, in the world that we're living in now, which is filled with so much hatred towards Jews, so much hatred towards people who are different, part of the ways we survive in a world that we're living with is to remind ourselves how strong we are and how beautiful we can be, and that there are children that are filling our sanctuaries that love and are proud of being Jewish, and even if they're a little noisy sometimes, that's the kind of sanctuary we want. And so in these weeks that have been filled with so much turmoil and so much despair and so much fragility, the hatred that's in Israel towards the Palestinians and towards Jews like us, actually, from America, and the fears that are arising that Israel will preserve itself as a democracy, and the hatred that is living in this country towards Jews, and it's not only towards Jews, but so many others, and once there's hatred towards one, there's hatred towards plenty. And so we arrive on Shabbat, I think, with this sense of like, how do we do this? How do we walk in a world like this? How do we find our way? And sometimes I wish the Torah, I would open it up and it would just give me the answer. This is why it is. And there is some part of our tradition that will say, well, this is why it is, or God wants it this way. I don't think God wants the world that we're living in. And so today I just want to focus on one aspect of this incredible story that I think many of us know in Parashat Vayetze, the opening story where Yaakov has fled from his home because he's been told by Yitzchak that he needs to leave because he's stolen the blessing from Esav, and he's really angry, rightly so. And also that he should find his way to Haran to find a wife, dual purpose, leave and find. And then he comes to this place, Vayifga b'makom. He finds this place, which there's a lot of debate in the tradition about what is it about this place. Is it an anonymous place? Is it a famous place? And the fact that the verb Vayifga is used, many commentators in the tradition say that he prayed at that place as night was falling. And according to the tradition, Abraham is associated with Shacharit, the morning prayer, Yitzchak with Mincha, and Yaakov with Arvit, with the evening service, because of this moment in this week's parasha where Vayifga b'makom, and he prayed, according to some commentaries, at that place at nighttime, the service that we're going to be entering in just a moment. And he puts down his head on a rock and has this dream. He falls asleep, and we know the dream that the angels, there's a ladder, and the angels are going up and down on the ladder. Normally you would think angels would be going down and up, but in this instance, and there are many reasons given in the commentators why they're going up and down. And he gets an assurance by God in the dream that God is with him. And he wakes from the dream and he says that famous line, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'ani anochi lo yadati. Surely God is present in this place and I did not know it. There are a couple of obscurities about this particular phrase. There's the word achen, which is often translated surely, or it must be so. God was in this place and I did not know. Of course, there's the people say the word that anochi, that I is used here, the word anochi is particular. And the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, who was a Tosaphist in the 12th century France, says that the achen comes to introduce the fact that, contrary to the thought when I lay down here, that this is a totally secular place, devoid of holiness, he says every time the expression achen occurs in the Torah, in the Tanakh, it means that a person is exclaiming that they had to revise an opinion previously held. Which is an interesting thought. And then in that moment he says, shaken, vayir'a vayomer mano ra hamakom hazeh. Shaken, he said, how awesome is this place. Ein zeh ki im beit Elohim v'zeh shara shamayim. This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. But I had never thought about the fact that the surely actually is related about his description of the place, in the fact that he realizes God is in this place. And in fact, what the achen does, the fact that he revises his opinion, we're not big as human beings on revising opinions. You know, we don't often like to change our opinions or to recognize that we've been wrong about something. But here, Yaakov recognizes a handful of things that have changed. He arrived at the place and he thought it was secular. He thought it was devoid of holiness, and he found that it is filled with holiness. He moved from a lack of awareness to an attentiveness. And he realized that he could discover something, that he could learn something, that he could change something, and that he could revise his opinion. And from that recognition, he says, how awesome is this place? Not only because he sees that God is there, but perhaps God is there is because he can change his perspective. He came to a place that he thought was without holiness and had a discovery that could be filled with holiness. And in that discovery, in the dream, in the seeing something new, in the recognizing that things weren't what he thought they were, he says, God is in this place, and I did not know how awesome is this place. Manora hamakom hazeh. And in the world that we're living in right now, where I think we feel very stuck and things that are not going to change, and that things are just the way they are, they're very devoid of holiness in so many places. Keeping this moment in mind of Yaakov's perspective, achen, surely we can revise our opinion, and to leave ourselves open to the possibility that things can change. And part of that change is often by stopping, by coming on a place, by taking a moment to breathe and rest, and to give ourselves some different perspective to look at things, which is exactly what Shabbat is for. Hamakom, the place, is not only a name for God, but in some ways is what Shabbat is. It's a place, a palace in time, as Heschel called it, to give us a chance to think differently about what this week has been, to potentially revise our opinion, not revisionist history that's not looking so good in the world we're living with. But it is a chance to look back and say, was there holiness where I thought there wasn't? Could I see something open up that was closed before? Maybe I was wrong there. I should think about my life differently, or what I said to that person differently. And maybe actually God was in a place that I couldn't see. And so on this Shabbat of Parashat Vayetze, I offer that just to say, sometimes it's just something small that reminds us that things might not always have to stay the same. And part of that is realizing that we can look at them differently and being open to something different. And in some sense, I think that's part of what's godly about what it means to be a human being. Our divine image is to recognize that we have the power to see differently, not just see with our eyes, but really intake our lives differently. And to not only see or feel or hear the story that was, but actually to know that there is some connection between heaven and earth, and that things are moving down and up and down. And we just have to kind of realize that we want to be on the ladder towards something that's different. Manora hamakom hazeh. How awesome is this place? Filled with children, filled with all different kinds of people, filled with the desire to find God in our lives and holiness in the profanity. And even in the darkness as we arrive at this nighttime prayer, to know that whether our heads are up or our heads are down, that we might dream towards connecting to heaven a little bit, and not only be asleep, but wake up to the possibility. Manora hamakom hazeh. How awesome in this place. Zeh hashar hashamayim. This is the gateway to heaven.